What's going on, everybody? It's Monday, and I really love my Wednesday Q&A videos because it's fun to share your opinions with other people, and it's also fun to hear what other people are interested in. But another thing I really look forward to are these Mondays, because on Mondays I ask a question to you and I see what your responses are and what your opinions are. And I'm not going to act for a single second like I'm the expert at everything. Far from it. I have a lot to learn. And this community, this midlife card community, has a wealth, an absolute wealth of information. And there's so much that I can learn from all of you. Now, this week's question is a tough one. It's really about people's opinions on card alterations, card restorations. Now, on Wednesday, I participated in that live stream with John Mangini and Dave Blue Jacket 66. And we talked about the topic, and they kind of went back and forth, and they had a lot of common ground, and they had some disagreements, and the chat was going crazy. And we went for about 2 hours, and it was a blast. But I also want to know, what do you guys think? In particular, what do you guys think about this? And I asked the question, and you all came back with some really, really good points. So that's what we're going to cover. But first, this was an absolutely humbling week. I don't know how else to say it, but it was humbling. The generosity that was poured on me this week is unparalleled. It was incredible. Now, a couple months ago, I had just for fun one day on a rainy day, made that T206 card. And then people were saying, hey, I want one. And I was like, really? Okay. So I printed them. I said, hey, just send me a self-addressed stamp envelope. By the way, if you are interested and you do want one, I still have a lot of them. I'll put the address on the screen right now. But what I did was I said, just kind of at a spur of the moment as I was talking about it, I said, well, how about y'all trade? Because trading seems to have gone away for the most part. So I collect Roger Clemens cards. I collect Matt Manning cards, my former student who's a starting pitcher on the Tigers. And I collect Greg Nettles cards. Those are my three real PC guys. Now, of course, I collect other guys as well. But those are like my PC guys that, have a special meaning when I collect their cards. So I said, if you want to trade me, feel free to throw something in. Let me again say, you don't have to send me anything with a self-addressed stamp envelope. I absolutely don't need anything. But if you want to, it's kind of fun. It's fun for me, at least, because you guys are sending me some cool stuff. So I wanted to quickly run through some of the stuff that I've gotten. And some of them touched me hard. Some of them really, really got me. First, you got a Matt Manning there. Matt is a great guy. Matt, again, I had in class, maybe almost 10 years ago now. So Eliza sent me 3 Mannings. This is the second one. I love it when I get Matt's cards because I don't collect a lot of modern. Well, I don't go out and buy and rip packs of a lot of modern. So the only way that I can really get some of these is if I have to single them out. And then Mark Ford. Mark hooked me up with this Jokic card, Monopoly Prism. Very cool card. Obviously, he's one of the best players in the NBA right now. So thank you for that, Mark. Love it. Look at this one. Taylor hooked me up. This is a card I got to hang on to long term. Taylor, when he's in the majors, this card is going to be worth a fortune. Thank you for that, my friend Taylor. Then I got this Clemens card from Brent. There aren't a lot of Clemens cards in Red Sox uniforms that I don't already have. I do not already have this one. So Brent, thank you for adding that one to my Clemens PC. And then my guy Craig. Now, I've talked about Craig and what a great guy he is on a lot of my videos of card shows. He's a local dealer, has awesome stuff, super good guy. I mentioned in the last card show video that he gave my dad an Elston Howard rookie, a beautiful Elston Howard rookie the other day. when we saw him at the Fairfield show. And Craig traded me a Greg Nettles patch card. He even got the pinstripe in there. See it? It's even got a pinstripe. And he traded me that for one of my cards. So thank you so much for that card. I absolutely love that card. And then my guy Jose, he said, hey, I know you already have one of these. I don't have one of these. It's a Jersey Fusion Warren Spahn. Now, if you're not familiar with Jersey Fusion cards, they take a card and then a swatch from a game-used jersey from the player. So I am definitely a Warren Spahn guy. I have several Warren Spahn cards. He's one of the guys that I collect. And this is a new one to my collection. So thank you for that, Jose. And then Darren, my friend, my friend Darren from Return to Collecting. What a great guy. And he's been busy this week. He's had a couple things going on this week, made him super busy, but he still took the time to send me what I think was a blockbuster offer for one of my cards. A Greg Nettles rookie card signed by Nettles with his MLB debut date. I mean, Darren, you beyond outdid yourself. This is insane. Look at that. That is amazing. Absolutely love that. That is a featured part of my collection. And then my friend David sent me, see, you know that a gift is special when it makes you emotional. And I don't usually get emotional, especially when it comes to my cards. David, you absolutely nailed it and caught me off guard on this. So as I mentioned recently, I lost my four-legged buddy, Mandy. And it's been a difficult adjustment. I'll be honest with you. Every time I'm at the barbecue, I watch my feet to make sure I'm not tripping over her because she was always at my feet. Every time I'm on the couch or on my chair and I'm watching a game, I look down to pick her up and put her on my lap. And it has been hard. Very, very hard. And David gave me such a thoughtful gift. Blew me away. So this is from the 1933 Sport King set. And I have a couple of cards from the Sport King set. I have a couple of golf cards. And there's a card with this, Iditarod team and his lead dog. And David was telling me, he's like, I'm pretty sure this is the only major release sports card that has a man and his dog on it. And he bought it for me and Mandy. And to say that it moved me is an understatement. I can't think of a much more thoughtful thing that you could do to combine my card collecting with my best bud, Mandy. So this will be a card I will treasure for until I cease to exist on this planet. This will be a card that is very, very meaningful to me. So my friend from Seattle, thank you so much. Now, I also got another massive, I consider this a massive addition to my collection. I collect autographs. I have some, ticket stubs. I have cards. I collect a little of everything. But when you talk about collecting sports stuff, to me, the absolute pinnacle is game used. It's game used memorabilia. I mean, how could you get much higher than that? Well, as I've mentioned, and I just mentioned a minute ago, one of my former students is in the starting rotation for the Detroit Tigers and has been for a couple of years. And he's very, very good, and he is a great guy. His senior year, spring semester of his senior year, he had 4 classes, and 2 of them were mine. In fact, one of the 2 classes, he missed both of the classes for like a week because he just came up to me one day at the end of class. He said, Mr. Miller, just to let you know, I'm going to be gone for the next few days. I was hoping to get the work so I don't fall behind. I'm like, yeah, of course. Didn't say where he was going, nothing. Well, come to find out, Matt went to play in the Under Armour All-American game at Petco Park. That's where he was. He wasn't for high school. He doesn't tell me that's where he's going. He doesn't try to, flex and tell me about how he's invited to this game. And I'm like, I didn't know. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, yeah, for sure. And I gave him his work. Comes back, first day back, his work's all done. I mean, he's just a great guy. I watched the game. He pitched an inning in the game, which was awesome. He ends up getting picked 9th overall, 9th of the first round. A month after graduation, maybe not even a month after graduation. I'm super happy for him. He gets a $3.5 million signing bonus. He's just a great kid. And, I followed him through the minors and, we've stayed in touch a little bit. And so yesterday, me and him and one of his friends, and a fourth friend of ours went out golfing. And I had been joking with Matt for a while. I'm like, Matt, you got to get me a jersey. I need you to sign me a jersey. Oh my gosh. Matt pulled through. So Matt walks up. I come out of the pro shop and Matt has a jersey, his jersey, draped over the steering wheel of the golf cart that I'm in. So I come out and I go, oh my gosh, you got me a jersey. And he's like, yeah. Sign it. Just let me know what you want me to do. And I'm like, cool. This is amazing. Thank you so much. So he ends up, okay, let's get a silver Sharpie so he can sign it. So he signs it, and we're playing golf. And again, he's a world-class athlete, so he's a pretty good player. And so we're playing, and we're on like the 8th or 9th hole, and I'm like, so like, where does a jersey like that come from? Like, is that just like extras, and at the end of the season they just give you extras? Because it has all the logos on it. It has Matt's name on the back of it. And he says no, that I just, at the end of the season, I just took all the jerseys in my locker, and I took them home. And I go, well, how many jerseys did you have? And he goes, well, we have gray, white, and blue. He goes, I have like 2 or 3 of each. And I'm like, oh, so this was just like in your locker and it was just like left over? And he goes, well, yeah, I wore them in games. And I'm like, so the jersey you just gave me isn't just like an extra jersey off the shelf. That's you wore that in games? He goes, oh, I wore that jersey in multiple games. Several games I wore that jersey. And I'm like, boom, oh my gosh, you gave me a game-used jersey? A game-used jersey. Now, that's like the pinnacle of sports memorabilia. And the connection of it being one of my former students, unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. So, to say that was generous, if you're looking for a young player in the majors to root for, there are not many people that are better human beings than Matt Manning. So I root for Matt. He is truly a great guy, and that gift humbled me for sure. With that said, let's take a look at your responses to my question from last week of what are the acceptable and non-acceptable alterations, restorations to sports cards. Let's take a look.
I think it's okay to gently wipe off unintended debris on a card that's not intended to be there by the manufacturer. Dust, fingerprints, gum that gets stuck, Blue Jackets cookie sneeze, all okay. When you get into surgical procedures to remove debris, the line is crossed. I also think the most prolific alteration that no one talks about is digital. I think online sellers across the internet adjust the luminance, chroma, and saturation of the images that they use to mislead unsuspecting buyers. I think that shouldn't be accepted. And that's a way that the PSA flip helps. You can color balance the flips, or you can check the QR code for the PSA scan.
Okay, So Mookie, a lot of us know Mookie Chilson. Um, I've come to the point where I now consider Mookie to be a good friend of mine. He is a terrific guy, and I think that he brings a perspective to the table a lot of the times that a lot of us aren't talking about, aren't thinking about, and I think he does exactly that right here. One of the things that's starting to happen is the creative adjustments to photos that are being listed. Now, a lot of us, when talking about vintage cards, have recently been talking about things like the color. The color of the card has become a big draw. And I've mentioned it myself. One of the reasons color has become more important is because of the soaking that we know has been going on and is going on, and the dunking of cards to clean the cards. Now, from my perspective, from what I've seen, the cards that have been soaked a lot of the time don't have as vibrant of a color. And so one way to ensure you're not getting a soaked card, or one way to make it less likely that you're getting a soaked card, is to buy a card with very bright colors. But as Mookie points out, if you're buying a card with very vibrant colors from the picture, but that's just because the picture was adjusted and the color saturation was increased, and then you get the card and it's actually not vibrant colors. Now, I don't really know how eBay could potentially stop that, because how do you stop a color from, or a picture from being adjusted before it's posted? I suppose you could have it where the only pictures that could be uploaded are uploaded directly from the device's camera, but then people that upload computers, or upload cards from computers, wouldn't be able to upload the picture. So that doesn't work. This is a tough one. Now, another thing that Mookie points out is, well, one thing you can do is you can look on the PSA, look up the serial number on the PSA a website and see the photo of the card that PSA has. Now, in my perspective, my opinion, sometimes the pictures on PSA's website, well, while they're high resolution pictures, they seem to have kind of a glare on them, which I think adjusts the color. So I don't think they're the best option. SGCs, I think, are better, but SGC and PSA both don't have a long history of uploading the card picture. It's something that they've only been doing for, I don't know, a couple of years or so. And so a lot of the cards that we might be interested in that have been in holders for a while don't have the option of looking them up. Mookie also then talks about using the flip to adjust the flip to the correct color that the flip should be, which then adjusts the color to, the correct saturation. But that's not an easy thing for a lot of us to do. That can be confusing. That can be, how do you get it exactly right? It's definitely a problem. And it's especially a problem when you see one of these listings that does not accept returns, right? You're like, this card, they don't accept returns, but maybe the picture that they're showing has increased color saturation, and then you get the card and it doesn't have that. Sometimes cards are at different angles, and you go to look it up on the PSA or SGC registry to see their scan of the card, and it's not up there because the card was, graded before that. And then even raw cards, obviously ungraded cards, don't have anything to check. So this is definitely a problem. I suppose the ultimate answer is, if that were to happen to you, that you could always go to eBay's buyer protection, which is what you received is not really the same as what was presented in the picture, right? If the picture and the listing has these bold colors and you get a kind of faded out card, that is something that I would think that the buyer protection should be able to cover. But I don't know exactly how that works because I haven't really been down that road. These are things to think about. This is a point that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, but there's no doubt about it that that is happening, that the images on listings are being adjusted, and then a card is showing up, and it doesn't quite look exactly like the card that you thought you were buying. And that is something to kind of have in the back of our mind whenever we're buying something, especially a higher dollar purchase.
The K-Man is top-notch at what he does in card restoration, and most of his methods I approve of, as I've never seen him add color or fill pinholes, for example. Where I draw the line is when adding color or pulp fill in for the pinholes in cards is strictly off limits. If, for example, you have a beloved childhood card with a crease, only to apply K's methods, and the crease is mostly gone, wow, oh wow, the more the merrier. Not to mention, I've seen K-Man up the value of high-end cards once they're restored and come back from a grading company at a considerable higher grade. So count me in when it comes to preserving cards back to their original state.
Okay, so we had the big thing on Wednesday with Mangini and Dave, Blue Jacket 66, about the discussion back and forth about what's all-terrain and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and buyer beware, and the whole topic. And obviously, there's never going to be an industry agreed upon this is okay and this isn't okay. That's just not going to happen. And then also when you have grading companies that are coming out, and the grading companies are saying things, they're giving grades based on what they see, but maybe what they see is what not has always been there. And that's one of the hard things, is it's like a lot of the alteration stuff does, in my opinion, kind of fall on the grading companies, because they're supposed to be the experts who are evaluating the card, checking the authenticity and the condition. But I've also seen interviews with Peter Steinberg from SGC, and he says, let's just say, for example, that there was a mark on a card, and the mark is no longer there on the card. The mark has been removed, but it's undetectable. What's SGC supposed to do? What's PSA supposed to do? How are they supposed to know that at one point there was dirt on the card, but there's not dirt on the card now? I mean, I don't want altered cards out there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not for Kurt's Card Care. Like this comment is for Kurt's Card Care. But from the perspective of the grading company, if something's not there, right? It's not there because it's been removed from whatever means it was been removed. How are they supposed to know it used to be there? I mean, testing for chemicals, do they do like a swab and they run the swab through a machine to check for certain chemicals? I suppose, but some of the chemicals that I think are used on cards have like a super high vapor rate. I know for a long time, some of the things that have been used is like lighter fluid or things like that. And that stuff evaporates super fast. So if lighter fluid is used, let's just say, for example, to take off a mark, and the mark is removed, and then it goes to PSA, and PSA can't tell that the mark has been removed, and they can't tell that lighter fluid was ever on the card. They just are grading a card with no mark. What do they do? I don't want alterations happening, but in fairness to the grading companies, I don't know what they could do differently. In some cases, there are some things that grading companies obviously could do differently. But there are some things like a mark is no longer there. How do we hold them accountable for not knowing that there used to be a mark? This is why it's difficult. If it was easy to tell that something was restored, or if it was through certain different processes, you could tell that it was restored, then there's an argument to be made that they should be catching it. But if there's something not there and there's no way to tell that it once was there, I don't know what we do. To the point made here, about Kurt's Card Care getting higher grades. Like, there's no doubt about it. There are cards that are soaked, that have cleaners used on them, that are put between pads and take the moisture's taken out. The card is cleaner. The card looks better. I mean, I've watched a lot of Kurt's Card Care videos, and in almost every case, the card does look better afterwards. It does. And I have no doubt that those cards probably get higher grades. But for me, just Greg's opinion, and I understand the opinion here, and I don't expect everyone to agree with me. Like, you are under no obligation to go, well, this is what Greg thinks, so this is what I gotta. I'm just a perspective in a sea of perspectives. I'm not really for dunking cards. And then you say, well, why not? Because I do understand the perspective too of, if something is not detectable, then why is it a problem? If nobody can tell that something happened, so a corner gets flipped up and somebody presses the corner down, and you can't tell that the corner was ever pressed down, why is it a problem? I don't know. That's a good question. Why is it a problem? But if chemicals are used, to me, just for me, it gives me a stomach ache. It doesn't feel right. If I wouldn't feel right selling something to someone that I put a chemical on. And other people go, well, why not? Who cares? Nobody can tell. The chemical's not detectable. The card looks nicer. Who cares? I'm not telling everybody else what everyone else should do. That's not my job. That's not my role. I'm just bringing up topics and then giving my take on it. But for me, I'm not for altering cards. To me, if there's a corner that's a little bit flipped up and I press it down with my thumb, I don't think that that's crossing a line. I don't think wiping a microfiber cloth on a card to get rid of a fingerprint or a little bit of wax residue is crossing a line. I think adding a chemical, this is just for Greg, if you're adding a chemical to a card, to me, that feels sneaky and that doesn't feel right to me, so I'm not for that. Greg, that's just me. If you're using a tool to fix a card, to me, for me, that's crossing a line. But if you're just kind of pushing down a corner with your thumb, if you are taking a light little, t-shirt and getting a little bit of wax residue off, to me, that's just me. That's where I'm at. But I've said before, I'm very open to it. I was kind of open to the idea of soaking because, you have these cards that are in scrapbooks and they're in albums and it's hard to enjoy them and share them and display them. So if you soak them, you can remove them from the album. And so I'm like, well, that's kind of that for me, that was a gray area. But then Orlando from A Collector's Dream did a really, really good video. I shared it. I recommended it last week. And he had 3 different cards, the same exact card from the Goodwin Champions set. And we're talking about a card from 125 years ago. One of them still had the glue, the paste on the back of the card. It was just pulled straight out of an album. One of them was soaked in water. Clearly it was water that it was soaked in. And then one of them was soaked in some sort of chemical. And the stain, the glue stain, years after he had it in a holder, started to come back. So if something was done to a card and you say, look, you can't tell, well, maybe you can't tell today, but will you be able to tell in 5 years? In Orlando's video, it's clear as day if you watch the video. Go watch the video. That there is a visible stain now that wasn't there when he bought the card. So if you're doing something to a card that could eventually maybe come back, that the person wasn't aware of and it wasn't disclosed that it was done, that again just kind of gives me a stomach ache. So I have a hard time getting on board with it. I understand the perspective of wanting the card to look like its original state. And at the end of the day, we all have to do, make our own decisions and what we're right and wrong. And I'm not trying to say I'm better than anyone else or worse than anyone else. Just saying, for me, I'm not really on board with chemicals or soaking for me.
As for the card alteration topic, I guess I'm a don't care, as I'm not in the market of buying higher dollar cards that might have been altered. The high dollar cards I am saving up for are going to be authentic or 1 to 1.5, so I can afford them. I don't need my very old vintage cards to look like they aren't very old. As long as the picture is still pretty good, I'm good.
I absolutely love this point. I think this is a terrific point. See, there are two types of people. There are two types of collectors, I should say. Let's just take cards out of the equation because of the emotional attachment we all have to cards. But let's just say old gas station signs. All right, so let's just think old gas station signs. There are two types of people that are collectors of gas station signs. There are the people who want the gas station sign that was put in a box, that was put away, never displayed, never taken out of the box, and it's like it came out of the factory from, 1950. That's what they want. They want the mint condition gas station sign. And then there are people who actually would prefer the sign that's got some rust on it, that's got some sun damage to it, that has some aging and patina to it. Right? That is another perspective. And both of those collectors, that's fine. That's fine to be either one of those collectors. And I think to a certain degree, when we're talking about pre-war cards especially, I'm kind of with John here. I mean, you've got a card that's 100 years old. Why do I want it to look like it's brand new? Well, some people would say because it's rarer. Because the brand new looking one, there's hardly any that look that nice. And that's the chase. Totally get that. I totally get that. I absolutely understand why someone would want the top tier, high-end version. There are very few that look as nice as it. That is one collector group within collecting anything. And then there's the group that kind of like the thing that looks old. They kind of like the thing that looks loved and it looks enjoyed and it looks cherished and treasured and has the patina of the oils from the person's hands touching it and showing it to people, and the rounded corners because it was just stuck in a jewelry box or a sock drawer and taken out to show friends when they came over, and it wasn't protected. And the love is part of the story. So if you clean it, you're removing part of the story to make it look like it wasn't loved. And I think that's kind of what he's saying here. And I totally get that. A lot of people are totally okay with the card that has been loved as long as they can enjoy the image and the image is clear and the image is recognizable and there's nothing on the card that's like distracting, like a big paper loss across their face. As long as the image is still enjoyable, the fact that it has love on it still is an appeal for a lot of us. So I totally understand this perspective of, I don't really mind if the card looks old and the card looks loved, because that's part of the card story. It is old and it is loved. Why do I have to remove those things? I think it's a great point.
Generally, card care practices that I find objectionable include any procedure where a foreign substance is added to the card or part of the card is removed. So cleaning a card with a liquid cleaner or buffing it with wax is over the line to me, as is any sort of trimming or removing pieces of cardboard from a rough cut. However, rubbing the card with a microfiber cloth is fine with me to remove dirt or fingerprints, as dirt and fingerprints are not part of the card. and pressing down a corner is okay with me. I mean, cleaning your card for grading is okay. Little fingerprint or smudge, or if you have this little bit of wax or gum, you may be able to pick it off safely is okay. Even a corner that you can push down, that's fine. But when you start adding chemicals and sprays and all that garbage, that's too much. You're doing too much.
So the reason I shared these last two comments is because I think that they're probably the ones that are the closest to where I currently sit with my opinion. It's like if I take my thumb and press down on a corner a little bit, that doesn't really feel like alteration. If I have a little bit of wax on the surface and I just kind of lightly take the edge of my sweatshirt and kind of rub it and the little bit of wax residue comes off, that doesn't really feel like alteration to me. But as soon as I start taking chemicals to a card, as soon as I start dunking a card, as soon as I start using tools on cards, to me, that's where it starts to get a little bit uncomfortable for me. Now, I want to be perfectly clear, though. Just because I have an opinion or I have something that I'm not comfortable with, it does not mean that that's the right answer. It really doesn't. You know, if I go to sell my house and I have to go through the list of disclosures and I have to disclose certain things about my house, some people would include a lot of things that are really little items, like, you know, maybe the hot water heater doesn't have a ton of hot water. And other people would say, well, why would I disclose that? Someone else might say, well, sometimes we get gophers in the yard. And other people would say, well, why would I disclose that? But we all agree that if there are cracks in the foundation that we're aware of, you have to disclose it. And if the roof is leaking, you've got to disclose that. To me, the things with card alterations that we can kind of all agree are alterations is adding any color to a card, filling a pinhole on a card, trimming a card or removing a piece of a card. Pretty much everybody that I've heard talk about this topic are on board with those. And to me, that's the leaky roof or the crumbling foundation on a house disclosures when selling your house. But the rest of it, the stuff like soaking it, where does that fall? Or the things like polishing it or using a tool to, you know, try to push down a crease. Where does that fall? I think those fall into the disclosures, right? That a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable with, but some would. And at the end of the day, I think everybody just has to do what they feel is right. And for me, I know what I feel right is not using tools, not using chemicals, not soaking cards, and not removing pieces of the card, adding things to the card, color or filling holes. That's just where I stand along the lines with these last two comments. It's a topic that's been around for a long time. I remember as a kid, 12 years old, whenever my dad would buy a card, one of the last things he'd do before paying for it is he would take the card out and he would compare it to an existing card of the same set to make sure that it was full size and it wasn't trimmed. I mean, trimming is not a new thing. Color adding is not a new thing. But as prices have gone up, as values have increased, as the potential profit has exploded, then the likelihood of alterations is obviously on the rise. It's something we need to be aware of. And at the end of the day, anything we do in life, anything, I think we have to be okay with it in our heart. And And I would encourage everybody to only do things that if somebody asked or if you listed something, you would gladly, openly volunteer. If you're not willing to volunteer information to someone and you're trying to not disclose that something was done, I think at that point you have to go, is that something that I should be telling people? See, I try as a person, as just a member of society, what I try really hard to do is I try to only do things that I'm proud of. To only do things that if somebody says, did you do that or did you say that, that I could openly and honestly answer correctly. I don't want to say things where if somebody says, did you say that? I would want to say, well, no. We should never do things that we're not proud of. We should never do things that we're afraid others would find out about. At least that's my opinion. Now that's my take on this. So what is next week's question? Oh my gosh, if you're still here, this turned into a long one, but if you're still here, I certainly appreciate it. So the question for this coming week is, what's the category? What's the category of sports cards or even non-sports cards? So let's just say, what's the category of cards that you feel is not getting the love that it deserves, but eventually will? So, for example, if you think non-sport cards are not getting love, but eventually they'll catch on and really go up in value, then non-sport cards would be your choice. If you think football cards are undervalued and it will eventually go way up, maybe it's a player. Maybe you think Willie Mays is way undervalued and will eventually just explode in value. Or maybe you think that Babe Ruth cards are way less valuable than they should be and have the most upside. Maybe it's the, 1970s Kellogg's cards. Or maybe it's the, early 1950s Redman cards that aren't worth as much as you think they should be and have a lot of potential. That's my question for this week. What's the thing in card collecting that right now isn't getting the love that eventually it will and has a lot of upside? That's my question. I can't wait to hear what you all have to say.